Hello there. In this video I'm going to show you a stretch technique which primarily focuses on a muscle called the levator scapula. Now, although you can never stretch one muscle in isolation, this is the muscle which is going to get targeted most with this technique. Now, the levator scapula attaches to the transverse processes. Those are like the little wings of your vertebral bodies. Attaches to the upper four transverse processes in the neck and then inserts down onto the inner angle of the shoulder blade. And so its function is to change the distance between those 2 points, and therefore it has a big role to play in rotation of the shoulder blade, both in terms of facilitating rotation but also allowing rotation the other way. Because there's attachments into the neck, it plays roles in what's happening with motion of the neck and can sometimes contribute to rotation. The other thing to bear in mind is that where that muscle originates and where it courses over is a highly packed area. It can become very sensitized for a lot of people, and there's lots of neurovascular bundles going through here, and as such the levator scapula is often implicated in things like cervicogenic headaches or tension headaches, shoulder dysfunction, and it's part of many aspects of managing the neck and the shoulder if there's problems in that area. So with the technique here, from the off, it's really important when you're stretching anything in and around the neck that you're not going into anywhere which is described as a strong pull. You're just going to a mild to moderate pull, and that's important to take into regard when you start off this technique. Now, I think the stretch technique I'm going to show you is best suited for sitting, and that way you can grab onto the thing you're sitting on, and that serves as anchoring the shoulder. Remember, the levator scapula inserts onto the shoulder blade, so we want to keep that fixed when we do the stretching action. Sit up nice and tall, as if your head's filling with helium, and then have that grip, and that keeps that shoulder anchored. And it's the levator scapula on this side, of course, we're going to be stretching. Now, I prefer to start off the stretch by turning away from the side that's anchored. A 45-degree turn brings the nose over the opposite hip, and then you bring the palm of your hand up and over to lay on the crown of your head. At this point, you're going to be looking in at your elbow crease. Now, without letting your body position change, from here, slowly bring your nose and chin down towards the opposite hip until you feel a mild to moderate pull on the open side of your neck. And this is the first part of the stretch. Now, the reason for the anchoring is that if you were not aware of the origin and insertion and you weren't holding on to anything, often what happens if you look at my left shoulder is that happens, and that's normally accompanied with a curving and a slumping in the spine as well. Neither of those want to happen. So you've got the anchor, you're sitting tall, and this way we're just flexing the neck down towards that opposite hip, and it provides a really nice gentle opening along where the levator scapula courses. Now, because this muscle attaches to those wings, those transverse processes sticking out, if I change the orientation of my head, you have the option of stretching different aspects of the muscle. So if all is well at the first port of call and there's no alarm bells going off, you can very slowly pivot the head on its axis. So you imagine that you're kind of skewered between the crown of the head and the base of the neck, and from here you roll up towards the side that is being stretched. And as you do that, you'll be able to feel things changing subtly in the posterolateral aspect of the neck. Okay, now this could potentially access other things which are tight as well, like the scalene muscles. So when you're doing this, it's important that you maintain your upright posture through the torso and that you're just pivoting the head on its axis nice and slowly. Retrace your steps, come back to position 1, and then very slowly come back up out of your stretch. Now, the discussions about how often to stretch, how long the stretch would be, that's kind of fraught with a lot of debate. I think particularly if you're new to this sort of thing, or there's history of symptoms in the neck, you need to be treading very carefully here. And what I suggest is just a 15 to 20 second hold in position 1, and if everything's okay at that point, you can then rotate up to position 2, again holding for 15 or 20 seconds, and then releasing back out nice and slowly, and being very kind of deliberate with the strategy in terms of going into the stretch and coming out. Of course, exactly the same for the other side. Anchor the hand, turn away from the stretch, sitting up tall, nose down towards hip, position 1, rotating and pivoting. Now that rotation, you don't want to drag the head across the body. It's already in the position where the axis of rotation changes, so you're almost rolling the head through that skewer I mentioned earlier. So the levator scapular stretch is a good one to have because if you're working on improving shoulder function with restorative exercises and you need to address that with lengthening a muscle which is historically and typically very tight and restrictive, then it's a really nice kind of balance, and this is why you hear that phrase, lengthening and strengthening. You're strengthening muscles that work in opposition to the levator scapula, lengthening that one through stretch techniques, and they should complement each other nicely and form a nice part of a process of rehabbing or strengthening that area. Anyway, there's the stretch technique of the levator scapula, and it's, as I said, it's a really good one to know about.